The first time I met Luke Jacobz, he was hanging upside down out of a second floor window of a Balmain pub. That was almost 20 years ago. Times have certainly changed for this actor come TV host and almost anything in between. From hosting Channel 7's X Factor to a regular spot as Angelo Rosetta on Home and Away, Luke is also a two-time winner of Dancing with the Stars and was not shy about showing me his trophy. Not a euphemism. We chatted about his career, how he dealt with the loss of his father, how he manages expectations alongside fame, his recent long-distance relationship due to COVID, one that spanned well over a year, and the time Alf said cunt on Home and Away. Enjoy. Luke, thank you for sitting with me today.
You're welcome, Tom.
It's great to see you again.
Good to see you.
As always. And typically I ask people a few questions before just to kick us off.
Yep.
And
Does someone write them for you or have you?
Someone writes them for me,
Yep.
but they're the same one every time. So it's a little bit awkward because I get the email just before.
Gotcha, okay.
The first one is, if the world was ending tomorrow
Yep.
and you could have one last meal, what would that be?
Rachel. If I want to eat something, I want to eat something. Like to have a meal with her. Oh, sure. It would be probably a Japanese buffet, like just loads of sashimi and loads of Japanese food. I love Japanese food.
Any particular place that you really like that you would go back to?
Look, there's a few places that I like. I've once been to Nobu, which was really, really lovely, but I'm one of those people too that if I walk away and I've spent $150 and I'm hungry, that's bullshit. I hate that. And when you walk away and you go, I just want to get a cheeseburger. That's shit. That's a terrible meal. No one should walk away from a meal like that. That's that expensive and still be hungry. But anyway, look, there's been a couple of places. There was a place down in Crown in Melbourne. There was a Japanese restaurant down there that was really good. We actually had the chef come out one night. And we were in this little private room, and they had this abalone, I think it was.
Yeah.
Anyway, he made this was apparently deep sea abalone. Fantastic. But yeah, as long as it's fresh, it's good. I love it.
Can I pick up on what you said about the buffet thing? Because I find like I used to like buffets because, when I was a kid, I was kind of like, oh, there's all this.
There's such a selection.
I can have anything I want. But then later I found that the thing about the buffet is that, sure, there's a lot of food. There's all you can eat. But usually it's always shit.
Correct. Yeah, I think more so like when I say a buffet, I just meant like an all-you-can-eat seafood,
like veritable smorgasbord.
Yeah, smorgasbord. I love that word, smorgas. When someone I know that every word was made up, but if someone said, it's a smorgas, you go, that's just a made up. That's a terrible word.
Do you say schedule or schedule?
Oh, okay. This is hard. I'm going to check my schedule. I'm going to check my schedule. I'm going to check my schedule. Schedule, I think.
You think schedule?
I think schedule.
Yeah, I think I do schedule as well, but I've been known to slip into schedule.
Can we talk just briefly about things that you hate when people say?
Yes.
Okay. I hate asks. If someone asks you a question.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I'm going to go ask him.
Yeah.
That's not how it's spelled, so it should be that way.
But did you know that in Old English, that's actually the original way that asked was spelt, and then it evolved to be asked? So it was axed, and then it became asked. Not that they know that when they're making the mistake.
No, they're making the mistake because they can't speak. Because
that's right.
I think it's being lazy.
But they're accidentally saying it in
accidentally saying it in the really old. It's like when they say something, you go, I speak Latin.
Yeah,
you don't. You just mucked it up. Okay. When people chuck a K on the end of a G word, so anything.
Oh yeah.
Or nothing.
Yeah.
That really, really floats my boat.
That grinds your gears.
Grinds my gears. And when they change the TH to an F. So nothing.
Oh yeah, that's
nothing.
Yeah.
Oh,
it's a hard one.
Does my head in. Yeah, really.
I've been trying to get a lot better with, being accepting of the way that people speak. But when they do say things like everything happens for a reason really pisses me off.
You go, what fucking reason was it then? Why did that happen?
Yeah, because if anything, I believe the complete opposite of that.
Literally
nothing happens for a reason. It's not to say that we can't imbue meaning upon things that happen.
Absolutely, yes.
But, in the cosmic sense, everything happens for a reason just pisses me off. And it's just this weird social axiom that grinds my gears every time.
I was speaking, we went for dinner the other week, last week, and a friend of mine, Chib, said he really wants to change that whole concept of expect the unexpected. It's like, why don't we stop getting pissed off about things and expect the expected? You know what I mean? Like sit there and go, oh my God, this traffic was really shit today. It was going to be shit. So expect it. So don't go in there and get riled up about it because you've got, like know that sometimes things are the way they are.
That would be great.
And just fucking go, all right, that's how it is.
Yeah.
Just expect the expected.
Yeah, see, I think I do that already, but it comes out as pessimism.
Okay, sure.
It looks like cynicism.
Okay.
Because I'm a cynic.
Right. So that's not a bad thing.
But it's a great way for me to justify it, is saying what you said.
Yeah. Just expect it's going to happen. It's going to happen. Some people, Tom Segura said in one of his shows, some people suck. And then you just got to accept that because some people, like I know that I'll go to certain places and certain areas of my life that, you repeat go to them. And I know that there's going to be a particular person there that always talks a particular way to me or about me.
Do you mean a specific person or a specific type of person?
There's 3 or 4 places where there's a specific person.
Right, okay.
And it's just like I know as soon as I see that person, I go, they're going to be a dick.
Do you want to tell me who it is?
No, I can't because I can't.
Hey, you said talk about anything.
We are talking about anything. I'm talking about anything, and I can tell you he's that tall. He's got grey hair. You know what I mean? I'm just not going to say his name. But it's just that common thing where he immediately assumes that we're best mates, so he can just give shit to me in a way that I would happily do with my mates.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But then I go, no, I don't know you that well. Like, it's a little bit too full on, too quick.
Yeah.
So I know to expect the expected. I know he's going to be that dick. So when I get there, I sort of take the helmet off and I go, there he is. Hey, how are you? And you sort of put it on and just wait for him to do it. And he does it every single time.
Yeah.
And then my sister looks at me and she's like, yeah, I know, because she knows about it.
Yeah. And
then we walk away. So it just happens. But
it's a bit of a coping mechanism.
It is, yeah. You can kind of prepare yourself to be pissed off and allow it to happen.
What is your favorite virtue and which virtue do you think is most overrated?
So describe to me what you would say is a general virtue.
I mean, kindness, wisdom, things like that.
Mm-hmm. So, because I didn't know how specific you wanted me to go. So,
whatever you like.
So, for me, I think it's almost like the positivity. Always try to find some kind of positive out of a situation. Now, there's been so many situations that I think everyone's been in where people fucking hate the world, hate everything that's going on. This is all sucked. But then something happens throughout that time, which then turns into something good. You know what I mean? And it doesn't happen a lot, but I always try and find the positive out of the situation. Like if something goes wrong, maybe it happened because something else needed to happen. I've had jobs before that I've been told I had, and then it turned out they said, oh, look, we've given it to someone else. But then another job came up, which I loved. So if I got that first job, I would have been able to get the second one. You know what I mean? So those sorts of things. So I think for me is positivity would be my...
And to an extent, optimism?
Optimism, 100%. Absolutely. Yeah. I do like that. I like to try and... If something goes wrong, you go, okay, look, it's fucking wrong, but we can sit there and look at it and fucking hate it, and then that's all we'll think about. And then everything we do in life will then just keep coming back to that because it's the only thing. I think if you can let go of it and go, all right, look, let's just try and move on and think of other things. So yeah, there's a bit of that. And I think I think people being overly friendly when it's fake is bullshit. I hate that. And as a generalization in America, that's very much it. Hey, it's so good to see you. It's like, I've never met you before in my life. Why is it so good to see you? I just find that's really, really fake. Or someone might not like someone and they're like, oh my God, I've been looking forward to seeing you and catching up with you for so long. And you go, 2 minutes ago, you were just saying how much you did. Like, I don't like that fakeness. I'd rather someone say to me, hey, look, I don't really know you that well. Okay, cool. You don't have to put it on. You don't have
so is it an integrity thing or is it an overzealousness?
Probably a bit of overzealous. I think, I just think that people very much so want to appear to be always friendly and happy and everything's going great. But which is fine to an extent. And I'm majority of the time for me, I am happy. If I'm not, I don't go out. You know what I mean? Like I'll stay. I don't want to put that negative on any other energy on other people. But yeah, I think that's some people when they're just fake and they're like, and I know they're trying to be nice, but sometimes you're like, you don't need to do that. Like, shut up.
Yeah.
You don't have
it's to a lot of energy to deal with.
It's a lot of energy to deal with it. And if you know that they're not in a good mood, just go, cool, man, hey, look, if you're having a hard time, let me know so then I can read the room and I can be there with you and help you do through that rather than, trying to always be up there. So, yeah.
Okay. And who was the first person you remember looking up to when you were young?
Very, very cliche, I suppose, but it would be my dad, because I grew up, and when we grew up, we were very, very active. We did, karate, we did soccer, we went camping and that sort of stuff. And, playing soccer, my dad used to play rep soccer, so he was very good at soccer. So he was a soccer coach, and he coached my brother, and I think he did 1 year with me. So you looked up to him because he was the guy that could play soccer, And then when we did karate, my dad was the sensei. So he was like the Mr. Miyagi. So, you looked up to him because you go to karate and there'd be 50 people in the class with all their gis on and doing exactly what he said as he was, so you looked up to him doing that. And when you went camping, he would set the tent up and he would set the fire up and he would play so you would as a kid and then growing up, it was always that man that sort of, he knew what he was doing and he was such a good leader and teacher and his patience and stuff like that. So, I think from as early as I can remember, it was him, because he was the most predominant male figure in my life. And I loved being around him. Didn't want to do anything without him. It was always like, we're going camping. Well, are you coming? And Dad's like, no, you're going with your mates. I'm like, well, I want you to, like that was that kind of thing. So very, very lucky to have that kind of relationship with Dad. So, but like when we were growing up, because we were so active, we always had so many other people around us. So I would see other people looking up to my dad because he was the karate instructor and because he was the soccer coach, so that made me kind of look up to him even more, because like everyone else admires him. So
yeah, because everybody kind of looks up to their parent in that degree anyway, but then he also wore those hats of doing those things.
For so many other people as well. Yeah, you'd look up to your parent for that as well. But then, like you said, when he was in the different positions and when you'd go up there, and I had, friends that would go up to Dad, and pull him aside and ask him advice and stuff like that, like that they couldn't ask their parents, or, just different things in life that they wanted to learn more about. So, Dad would come up and he'd say, oh, so-and-so came up to me today and asked how to do this. And I was like, oh, and did you help him? Yeah, of course I did. And it's like, fuck, that's my dad. Like, that would do that. That's what I loved, And so I had that, from as young as I can remember.
Yeah. And as I understand it, he passed when you were...
He did. Yeah, he passed in 2015. So was that 6 years ago now? So it was very, very sudden with Dad. So I was traveling overseas with my girlfriend at the time, and my nan had a mild stroke a few months before we left. So we were sitting there in Thailand, and my ex got a phone call, spoke to my stepsister. How you going? Came back and she said, Luke, I need to talk to you. And I went straight and went, oh, it's Nan. Because she had the mild stroke. I thought there was something like that. She goes, oh no, it's your dad. And I was like, what do you mean it's my dad? She said, yeah, no, he's had a fall. They've actually found a tumor in his brain. And I was like, okay. Absolute honest reaction. I went, okay, yeah, all right. So do we want to go home, or are we going to continue? She said, oh, we should go home. I was like, but why? It's Dad. He's all right. That's nothing's going to happen. So anyway, I literally went into a fog. There was absolutely nothing that was affecting me or changing my mind about any sort of thoughts. I was just like, oh, it was just a really weird haze kind of way of living during that time. And it's like, okay, we packed up our bags and we changed our flights and we got in the car and we're sitting in the car, and I started having a drink, and then I had another drink, and because we had like a 4-hour taxi ride to get to where we're going. And I got in the plane, came home, got off and went to the airport. He just had his first operation. Basically, he had a fall, and Charlie T.O. went and saw him and said, look, it's massive. We need to get in there now and check out what it is. So anyway, so I got in there and I saw him after his first operation. And he said, look, Charlie said he got most of it. We'll just see how we go. Okay. I was like, oh, cool. I didn't look into it too much. I didn't want to believe in it too much because I was like, my dad's invincible.
How old was he at this point?
60.
Oh, wow.
So he died in 2015. So at this point, he was 59. So he died at 60. So at this point, he's 59. And, it was that thing of going like, it's like, no matter what happens to Dad, he'd be fine. I saw him with cuts on him from work or whatever. It's like, stitch up and you're fine. Nothing happens to that guy. So I kind of was in a bit of, in a lot of denial for a lot of it. But then, I was supposed to move to America. And Dad's like, hey, listen, it's just a tumor. You go move to America. I want you to go follow your dreams. That's what we're supposed to do. So I said, okay, I'll go to America because you told me to, because I want to get over there and get a job straight away so I can ring up and say, hey, Dad, I've got a job in America, Anyway, so went over there. As it turns out, I was doing another seasons of The X Factor, came back, and then I just finished doing the home visits, and my stepsister rang up again. She said, "Look, you need to be home. He's just taken a real turn." So he had a second operation, and then that last sort of month and a half was basically palliative care at home. So I was awake from 7 at night till 8 in the morning, and I was looking after him during the night because he was always up and down. And then he just got progressively worse and worse. But I think during that time, because I was spending every minute of the day with him, I then accepted the fact that he was getting worse, and and I didn't want him to be in pain for a long period of time. But he was kind of on his way down. But after that last bit, it sort of just started to really, really drop dramatically. So I had almost become accepting of it and went, okay, he's not going well. Yeah. He's in a really bad place. So when he did die, we had just left the palliative care unit, and I sort of kissed him on the forehead and said, no, listen, don't have to hang on anymore. You're doing great. And so as we left, then I got a phone call 5 minutes later saying he's just gone. So it was almost like he just sort of let go at that right time. So, but I didn't cry at the time. I was there for everyone else because I wanted them to be okay. And I was like, no, that's okay. He's not in pain anymore. I think the more I was convincing them, the more I was convincing myself. So it was almost as if he kind of, was able to just sort of let go. So we went back there and, the family came and there was lots of tears and everyone was really, really sad. But there was a point though where I kind of felt more relief because he wasn't able to do what he was used to doing, But the best thing I ever did in regards to that, like making, the best out of a bad situation was, and a friend of mine encouraged me to do it and said, why don't you go to him and just put the voice recorder down or film it or whatever and just sit down and ask him a whole bunch of questions. I was like, how do I ask a man and like say, hey, listen, you're dying, but I want to ask you everything so I don't regret it, So anyway, so I went out with some friends the night before and we basically went out for Chinese, came home and I sat there with my friend Annette and I was just drinking. And I said, the next day I'm going out to Dad's. I'm going to get a cab out there, but I'm going to go out and have a drink first because I need the courage to open the conversation. Once we started, I knew we'd be fine, but I needed that courage. So I got out to Dad's and I had a beer and he said, mate, it's lunchtime. What's going on? I said, do you want a beer? And he said, no, I don't. Anyway, so I had a beer and I had 2 beers. I said, all right. I kicked everyone out of the house and I sat down and said, all right, mate, this is going to sound really, really shit, but I want to be able to hear your voice for the rest of my life and I want to be able to ask you some things now that I might not be able to ask in 15 years' time. Like I didn't want to put a time limit on how long he had to go. And he said, he started crying and he said, mate, listen, I'm on medication. I'm not a fucking wimp, all right? I was like, I know you're not, Dad, And I was crying and I said, I'm not on medication, all right? So I'm a wimp. So he cried and then I sat there for 2 hours and asked him so many questions about his childhood, about what he wants me to achieve, what is he proud of me, all these questions. And I thought, like, as I was asking them, I was crying because, this is the last time that I'm actually going to hear him say it. Anyway, the best thing I've ever done because I'll go through times where I feel just horrible that I've done nothing or whatever, and I'll just listen to 2 questions. Hear his voice again. I can close my eyes. I can see where I'm sitting in the room. I can see him sitting on the couch. He had his tissues there and he had his glass of drink over there. I know exactly where I was. And I'm back in that room again. I'm back with my dad again. So that was, for me, probably one of the best things I've ever done. So in answer to your question, sorry, Tom, who have I looked up to? Dad. That's the one.
And that's a really interesting coping mechanism. I like that. But you also mentioned something that you said that being there in the end, part of it, and sort of looking after him to an extent and all that sort of stuff made it easier for you when he actually
he actually did die. Absolutely. Yeah. I think because if I ignored it, if I sort of went over to pop in and see him, hey, you going good? And then go back, I would just go, he looks a bit sick and that sort of stuff. But because I was there, at the very, very end, where he was, he was always in a good mood. This is the best thing about it. You hear a lot of stories about people that are in pain and that, they're grumpy and all this sort of shit. We bought in this TV. It was a fucking massive TV. It was like 100 and something inches. Like it was huge. So we could read the subtitles on it. So we're reading the subtitles like that because it was just, this room wasn't big enough, but he just needed it because his eyesight was gone. But he sat there, he's like, oh, look out there. He said, the bloody sharks are chasing the foxes. And there was a few of us there who said, sharks, what are you talking about? He said, yeah, look, the sharks out there chasing the foxes running around. And he's looking out to it like his property. He was out at Dural. And he's looking at it. I said, where are you, Dad? He goes, on the houseboat. And we looked at him as if he looked at us as if to go, like, where else do you think I am? And we're like, oh, we're on the houseboat, you know. And it was just, he was in his own little world, but he wasn't in any pain, and he had the people around him that he loved. So when he got taken to the hospital, he was only in palliative care for 2 or 3 days, and the doctors came up to us and said, how have you been doing this? And Wendy, Dad's wife, said, we just worked out how to do it. She said, he should have been in palliative care ages ago, just because of the amount of work that he needs. And we just had a schedule. I wrote down every minute that he got up to the toilet, or he wanted to have a drink, or he's hungry or whatever, and everything that he ate and that sort of stuff. And they said, this is the full-time care that palliative care normally do. But that was the worst, 6 weeks or whatever, but the best because I got to look after him. I almost felt like, he raised me. He taught me everything I know, and he taught me to be the person that I am. And I was able to then give everything back to him. And I'd sit there and we'd put cameras up around the house so I could watch him sleep and stuff like that. But then if he moved, I was there for him straight away, And I remember as a kid, if I had a nightmare, he'd be there. Like it was really, really lovely to be able to do that. So it made it a bit easier to accept the fact, because he just got worse and worse. And you don't want to see someone that has no hope of getting better. If it's something where you go, look, you're struggling at the moment, but there's a path to recovery. This it wasn't. The brain tumors just took over. There was no. It had spread. It was just. It got to the point where even Charlie said to me, he said, mate, I can't remove your brain. That's because it's like the type of tumor it was. As it goes, it's like tree roots. So as it goes, so you can take out the ball of the cancer, but everything that it's attached to, that all has the cancer cells in it,
and that metastasizes.
So then that metastasizes, and that goes and goes and goes. So it's. He said, I will never be able to get rid of all of it. You can have radiation, you can reduce it, but it depends on the type of cancer.
Sure,
whereas if Dad's one was an asshole.
It sort of makes me think, sometimes like a coping mechanism that I sometimes use is it's kind of like a perspective framing, technique where I think to myself, if something horrible happens that I can't really learn something from, it's just literally something that's terrible. I always try to picture like hypothetically a worst case scenario.
Correct. Yeah.
And then think about how much I would pay to be back in the original scenario.
Sure. That's a great idea.
In yours, I kind of imagine that, imagine if you had stayed in the United States or you hadn't come back and spent that time with him at the end.
Yep.
How much worse you would have felt now.
Absolutely.
And not having made that recording and all that sort of stuff.
Yep. That exact same sense is when he did pass and everyone said it was so sudden, you only had a few months with him. I was like, the amount of people that don't get to say the things I got to say to Dad, like you hear of car accidents and all this sort of stuff, like where something happens and it's a sudden and people go, oh my God, yesterday I didn't say I love you when I left, and they are going to think that for the rest of their life. Why didn't I say I love you when I left? So I think for me, the reason I'm able to, without sounding weird, be at peace with Dad dying is because every single night, I'd tuck him into bed, I'd kiss him on the forehead and say, I love you. And then we'd sit there and I didn't say, love you, mate. I'd grab him and say, hey, Dad, love you. And I could say it to his face, and I don't have regrets because we got to say all that stuff to each other, and like you were saying, put yourself in a situation, or, imagine yourself hypothetically in a situation where if I was in Thailand and they rang up and said he fell over and he died. Horrible.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm extremely grateful that it took my dad 6 months to die.
Definitely.
Rather than, have it happen terribly. And I think that's a technique your technique I think I would like to use in the future too, because that makes a lot of sense.
What about, have you ever developed any other techniques for dealing with, you were diagnosed with ADHD, weren't you, when you were younger?
Yep.
And does that make life a little bit difficult to traverse, or are there any sort of heuristics that you've come up with that help?
Look, there's certain times and situations where I know I can feel myself getting ADHD and I can feel it, and I'll have conversations, and at the end of it I'll say to someone, sorry, I was very, very out there then, and I can feel myself. I know when I'm getting excited. Sometimes I can tell now, and I can kind of slow myself down a little bit, but other times your mind just goes like this, like I'll get up to start doing something in the house and 2 hours later I'll have 15 things on the go, and all I wanted to do was wash my sheets. But then I've rearranged my bedroom. I've changed all the light bulbs so that the same color temperature will be in the lounge room. Like I'll just go to different things. For me, it's worked to my advantage because with my work, especially hosting, like with the X Factor, we're doing auditions. I've got to be up that whole time, and we sometimes have people there at the end of the day that are just so exhausted and they're emotional, and we might have made them wait till the end of the day so they do get emotional, right? But because then you see them upset, and not that we don't plan to upset them, right? Okay,
You obviously fucking do.
no, I didn't plan to. The producers do, right? I just do what I'm told, right?
Yeah.
But we know that if someone's got a story that they're going to say, like there was one girl, Michaela, years ago, and her father passed away like a week before she auditioned.
Shit.
So they were like, we'll put her on towards the end of the day because then she'll be tired. So when Luke speaks to her about it, we'll get some emotion, And I wasn't told push it. I was just told this is her story. Like this is what's going on. Everyone's got a different story, and so we were doing this, and I was like, oh, my dad's quite sick at the moment. He hadn't passed then, but he was quite sick at the time. So I'm having a chat with her. So I'm at the end of the day, I'm exhausted. Then she was crying. So then I was crying because she'd just said about her father passed away, and I knew that my dad was sick. Anyway, so in most situations though, my ADHD helps me get through those days because I'm quite up.
Right.
And so like I'll go for a bit of a walk around, get the blood going, and then all of a sudden I can then do 19-hour days when everyone else is absolutely off, exhausted. I can still keep going.
Actually, on that note, with respect to what you were just talking about live TV, I actually wanted to ask you because I know you do both and both quite convincingly, live and non-live TV. If you had to pick one of them to do for the rest of your life and you could only do that one, live TV or acting, which one would you do?
Oh. Look, for the rest of my life?
Yeah, you can only have one.
They're so similar but so different in ways that, for me with acting, I love to get a script where when I'm reading it, I feel emotional when I'm just reading it. Like, especially when it's for the first time and I'm reading the big print, I'm reading that, and I can start to feel a quiver or something. I cry like that. So, which is good. It works. No, it's good because it means that I allow myself to to feel an emotion. So if I can read a script and I've got to stop and start again because I'm getting too excited and move down. Those are the scenes I love because I can imagine how I can go into that scene and that sort of stuff. And I've done a few scenes in my career where at the end I've had a clap at the end of it where people have been really excited about it, which is such a great rush. But then when you're doing live TV, you can't have any more adrenaline because there's no cut. There's no, all right, let's reset again and start again. It's once that light's on.
Anything can happen.
Anything can happen, and it's like, you've got to expect the expected. You've got to expect the unexpected. You've just got to be so ready and so switched on that no matter what happens, you've got to then think on your feet and then run with it. And I think that's a massive rush as well. And it's funny because I hate watching myself. Cannot stand watching myself act or present because I'm just too picky. Oh, I should have done that. Or, ooh, why did your voice do it like that? Oh, I can't do that. So with live TV, I don't get a chance to because it's live. Once I'm done, it's done. I've got to physically look it up. But
is there a bit of an element where you judge yourself less for live as well because it's so fly by the seat of your pants?
Correct. I think so too. And if I were to watch an interview back that it was from live, my mum's always likes, oh, look at this bit, Luke. She makes me watch it again. She loves it. So if we do that, I'm a little bit easier on myself because I go, look, I know that the pressure was on. But with acting, because I know that there's a couple more takes, I'm like, why didn't I do better? So I hate it. I hate watching myself.
I would have thought that you would have commented on the difference in feeling of, presumably from X Factor, when you're doing live broadcasts, there's also an audience there. And so it's more like Wembley Stadium versus
Look,
a studio.
You get that. You do get that thing. You get that response. I think with hosting too, because with a live audience, it's fantastic. But the thing is, I think with theatre, if you're doing musical theatre or theatre, they're clapping for your performance. Whereas when I'm hosting, they're clapping for someone else's performance. So the audience kind of aren't really clapping for me or what I'm doing. I'm literally just the voice that goes, ad break, and now here's what you're here to see. So, but when you're on stage and you're performing, like with dancing, I just did Dancing with the Stars. When I'd finished a dance then and they applauded then, I knew they were applauding for something that I'd done. Whereas on X Factor, it's the audience aren't applauding for me. So, but having that
is there a difference there? Like
100%.
And you like the Dancing with the Stars audience reaction more than you like the X Factor
I do.
Yeah.
Because you know, like with X Factor, and there's a few other shows that I did. I did Pop Stars a few years ago, and you know, I've done a lot of charity shows, like we did the Perth Telethon. So you're there you're with the audience and stuff. So you got that audience behind you. And it does feel good. It does feel good when you can say, you know, are we having a good time? And everyone goes, yeah. Like you kind of go, whoa, they're responding to what I said. So there's an element of that. But I think, excuse me, when you're performing, like say with dancing on that stage, and when I finish, I know that that's because of what I had just rehearsed and practiced. Answer to your question, live TV or acting, I'm going to say acting.
Right.
I find that once I've completed a scene, and I won't watch it, but once I've completed it, I feel good about it.
Yeah.
I feel good about then I feel great.
Yeah. And you got to do a bit more of it end of last year.
I did. I went back to Summer Bay last year.
How was that?
It was good. It was weird. I hadn't acted for 9-10 years. So I'd hosted for most of the time. So it was different to getting back into character and learning scripts again.
Yeah. Riding a bike or not?
Yeah, it took a day.
Okay.
It definitely took a day.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. So, and my first scene back was with Alf Stewart, and he's really lovely. And I said to him at the beginning, because I did a lot of scenes with him when I did my first stint as Angelo, and I said to him, look, it's been a while, so you know, like, just can you please be a bit easier on me? He goes, mate, you know what you're doing, you're fine. And he wasn't like pushing off, but he's like, you know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Everything's gonna be right. The first time I walked down the driveway, it just felt like I was like a robot. It just felt so weird. But then it was like, okay, cut. All right, set up again. I was like, okay, no, I remember this. And then it almost felt like this the cloak of concern was just sort of stripped off me, and I was like, okay, I'm better now. And then then it felt really good. Well, like we did a few different things. We were like, oh my God, I can't believe we got away with that. But we said cunt on Home and Away, and
He did not.
I didn't. No, Ray Ma did. Alf did. And
did he?
Yeah. There was a missing hand, and there was a hand on the beach, and so he said, "Well, we need to go and have a shark hunt, like this, right? Right." Yeah. But we knew before going into it that you can't have a shark hunt. He goes, "But if you have a shark hunt like that and said it like that, we are only allowed one take, and we only did one take of it, and then
it went to air.
It went to air.
Perfect.
Yeah. So we had a shark hunt, and you know, I couldn't believe we said it, but anyway, that was. And when we did that, so we're like, okay, moving on. Okay, moving on. Okay, we're gonna move on. So that was good. That Home and Away, the big Arvo stuff that we did. You're so right. Like I'd love to go back and see some of the stories that I did, because some of the stuff, you know, I got to go up in a jet fighter plane and all those sort of things, but you just can't find them. There was no.
That would be in the archives. I'm sure you could get your hands on.
You could probably. Yeah, I know, but it would be it'd be a pain to get it. But like, I mean, now every show is you just type in the episode, the series, and what it's on, and it comes up on YouTube.
Do you find that you get a lot of support from people in the industry? I mean, like, are they supportive of what you do, or is it?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's always nice to bump into people you've worked with before.
Yeah.
It's always hard though, because there's so many social media platforms and there's so many different shows and stuff out there that if I bump into someone that I haven't worked with for a while, and you go, so what have you been up to? And they might have just done the most phenomenal show ever. But if I hadn't seen it, I feel like an idiot because I haven't seen it. But it's like, you know, I feel that
watch everything.
No, I can't watch everything. Exactly right. But it's funny if someone comes up to me and they say, what did you do the last 2 months? And I said, I did Dancing with the Stars. And they go, did they do another series of that? I wouldn't find it offensive because I know that you can't watch everything. But I always feel so paranoid when I say to someone, so what have you been up to? And they go, I've released a book, got 2 cooking shows, all this sort of stuff. And you go, fuck, sorry. Like, have you?
What about if you get recognized in the street? Do you like it or hate it?
There's 2 different people that say hello in the street. There's the people that are genuinely like, hey man, they might call me Angelo, or they might call, that's fine, you know, because some people's work, you know, they wake up, they get their kids to school, they go to work, they come home, they take their kids to drama class, whatever. Yeah. They watch Home and Away and they go to bed. Like, that's their lives. So I don't expect them to understand the difference, right?
Yeah.
And they're genuinely nice. Or like, you know, my girlfriend watches the show. Can we get a photo, man? It's like, yeah, absolutely. I love doing that. I will stop every single time.
Yeah.
But then the other people are you're on TV, you've got to do what we ask. Oi, get a photo with my kid. Who? Sorry, are you talking to me? Yeah. Why? You know, like I'm happy to.
Yeah.
But what I'll do is I've done this more than 50 times. I'll lean down to the kid. I said, would you like a photo? I said, yes. I said, why don't you? I say, excuse me, can I please have a photo? And I say, excuse me, can I please have a photo? Absolutely. You said, excuse me, and you said, please. And then you'll say, thank you, won't you? Yep. Wow. Your parents didn't teach you that, did you? And I'll do that all the time to make them feel like shit, because I'll be loving to the kid. They've done nothing wrong.
Yeah.
But when a parent comes up there and they just assume because you're on television that they can just do it. Like I've had people that just come up and just take a photo and you go, hey. I'm happy to take one.
Yeah.
But wouldn't you be happier if it was a photo with me with my arm around you smiling than this? Like, you know what I mean? Like, wouldn't that be a nicer photo?
Depends whether if it was going to be Daily Mail, then they'd probably like the latter.
100%. I would love the latter. Yeah, absolutely. It's so good though when you see all the photos of people that come out and they go, look how hungover that person is. It's like they've just walked out of yoga and they're just blinking, but they use that shot because they're halfway through blinking. It makes it look terrible. But I'm super happy to do that. One of the questions I asked Dad, I said, you know, what's the proudest thing I've ever done? And Dad said to me, he goes, Dancing with the Stars 2008. And I was like, okay. I said, oh, you know, like for winning. He goes, no, not for winning it. He said, after you won, because they flew down to Melbourne. He said, after you won, everyone was there, like all the other competitors, and everyone was there, and everyone was leaving out the back door, and everyone's like cheering your name, and they were all heading out to the after party. And he said, there was a young boy there with Down syndrome, and he came up and he said, excuse me, can I get a photo? And he said, I watched you say, absolutely. And you told everyone else to leave and you sat down and spent 5 minutes with this kid and just talked to him for a while. And you went and got the trophy. You made him hold the trophy. You got a photo with him. He said, and you stopped everything that was going on and you gave this kid all of your attention.
Yeah. You took the trophy back though, obviously, right?
I took it back off him. Yeah. No, he wanted to take it. I was like, bro, it's my trophy. Come on. So, yeah. He held it, but I was like, did you wash your hands first? Go wash your hands. Yeah. So, but he just said that you stopped, like this, the biggest achievement. You've got all this, and all this hype was going on. He said, but you stopped everything and stopped and talked to this kid. He said that was that not the trophy, not the winning. He said, but that moment was the proudest moment for me, and so that was cool.
As far as achievements that you do have, how do you? I mean, I've heard you speak sometimes about interesting ways of managing your expectations with things. I guess you would do that with life in general. Well, I've heard you talk about, you know, being a shoe-in, at least from your own perspective, on certain jobs, and then you don't get it, and the inverse of that as well.
Yep.
And, you know, it could be competitions or awards or jobs or ads or whatever it is. Yep. So how do you manage expectations in life generally?
Yeah.
Because you're quite positive and optimistic as well.
Yeah, you are, but I think
sometimes that can be too far if you want to manage expectations.
Of course, absolutely.
You don't want to go the other way.
The thing is, for me with the expectations is I don't ever truly celebrate a job until I'm doing it, because sometimes, you know, you might get the contracts and you sign it. That's great. But then if they haven't signed it, then it's not official yet. You know what I mean? So I don't ever celebrate anything until I've actually got it. So, you know, times where because I got the role of a character called Kim on Home and Away years ago, and they ended up changing that and they gave it to Chris Hemsworth. So I kind of sit there and go, well, he got it. He's turned out to be pretty good. So that wasn't bad. But going in for auditions and stuff like that, you know, there was an audition I did last year, and, you know, they rang up and said, Luke, you're perfect for the job. We want you to host it. This is great. I was like, fantastic. No worries. Let me know. Send me the contract through. I look forward to starting it. Then I got a phone call the next day saying, actually, the network have decided not to use you. Us as the production company want to use you, but the network have decided not to. They want to use someone that they've already got on their books, so they don't have to pay for it, basically.
Another Hemsworth? Or?
No, it wasn't another Hemsworth. No, there's 19 of them, I think, so it could have been
Hemsworth?
My God, stop taking my work. God. So you know, again, I kind of got excited about it, but I wasn't excited until I got there, until I start filming, you know what I mean? So you don't ever really, truly celebrate it. But expectations for me is I always hope for the best, but prepare for the worst. So in that same sense is because, you know, if you expect too much of yourself, then you're going to let yourself down. I obviously love to set high goals, and I will always keep setting goals, but I don't set them that the ones that are unachievable in a certain amount of time or whatever. I go, look, you know, I'd like to get this at some stage. Great, you can go for it. If it happens earlier, then I can set other goals. But you know, there's a great theory that we have is, you know, in the family of it's the 50% rule. Like, you never ever want to be too happy, because then the rebound of that is you're going to be really, really sad. You know what I mean? So you kind of want to live in the middle. You don't want to be, if you are really excited, remember how hard it was to get there. So that sort of keeps you in the 50%, right? You never really appreciate a fucking hot shower unless you've been stuck out in the cold and the rain for 2 hours. You know what I mean? Like, that's when that shower can be the worst pressure, but if it's a hot water, it's the best. You know what I mean? So you've got to have like all those kind of extremes either way. So I try to live my life as far as like managing expectations as the 50%, going, I'd love to achieve it, but where I am now, if I don't, I'm not going to fall. So just sort of keep in that 50%, keep right in the middle. And then that way, when it's good, you can feel the good, but you're not going to, fall too far from the sky, I suppose.
Keeping in mind with that, the way you sort of frame things there, and also taking into account your optimism generally and positivity. I know that you've had some pretty shit experiences with the pandemic.
Yes.
Before we get onto that, do you think that there's anything positive that will come out of it?
I think with the pandemic, COVID-19, I think shook the world, and I think we all kind of assumed that it all had happened, in the 20th century, that, we got through all that sort of stuff. It's not going to happen again. We are a new generation. But I think vast majority of people have realised that we're not invincible, and that, we do have to abide by certain rules just in life in general, I think a lot of people are going to excel in communication now, because people would go and sit next to someone at the office, hey, how you going? Good, and then take that for granted. Whereas if they got told you can't leave your house now for however long, all you wanted to do was go and see someone, all you want to do. And I think that like people are going to be a lot like more appreciative of going out for dinner. Like we would have dinners at home and it wouldn't really bother us. But now I'm like, fuck Uber. Let's go and sit at a restaurant. Let's go and sit at that person's restaurant, because no one's been sitting there for a while, and you go there and you get the best service of your life because they haven't had people there. But I think the world can get better. Or I think that people can improve their way of lifestyle now too, because they know how easily it can be taken away from them, especially over in the UK, like with the amount of lockdown that they had. I think, people are really going to sort of appreciate the little things in life, People like so many jobs now are working from home. So people are spending time with their kids more, like the kids come home from school. Hey, going, yeah, I'll be out in a second. Go and have half an hour. I can still work, but they're doing – I think people are interacting with each other a lot more.
There's an interesting thing that I was looking into, which a lot of people have what I think psychologist Laurie Santos describes as time confetti in their life, which is where they have lots of free time. Because technically, on average, we have more free time today than we did 50, 100 years ago.
Yep.
The problem is it's broken up into tiny little bits over a day. So perhaps you go into the office at 9 o'clock and you leave at 6, but over the day you have these little sort of 10-minute, half an hour things that you're not really doing anything. But because you're in the office, it's not really productive time.
Correct. Yeah.
So now that people are working from home, or a lot of them are, they can actually fill those pieces of time up with things that they would otherwise delegate to the weekend, which gives them more real free time, and they spend more time with their family or whatever they do. And so if you change that framework and you once you take it out the other side of COVID, provided that we get there,
we will.
There could be a completely different framework within which we live where time is better delegated.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think there's a saying where they say, if you want something done, give it to a busy person. You know what I mean? I've spent time between work where I've had 3 or 4 weeks of I've done nothing. And in those 3 or 4 weeks, I've done nothing. You know what I mean? Then, I'll start working on a job and, I'll come home exhausted, but I'm like, I'll get my dinner ready. I'll get my lunch and stuff ready for tomorrow. But while I'm doing that, I'll get my washing and stuff done. And all of a sudden, I get so much shit done because I'm doing stuff. Whereas when you've got nothing to do, you put it off. But I think, like you were saying, when people are at home, they go, right, I've got a meeting in half an hour. Oh, shit, I could quickly just go and do that. And they go and do that. Then on the weekends, like you're saying, they don't have to spend the first 3/4 of their Saturday getting that shit done that they have to get done before the next week, because it's already been done and you're just chipping away at it.
I think there's going to be things like that people aren't looking for that are going to improve lives little bit by little bit.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And once the whole, pain and anguish of the actual pandemic has hopefully somewhat subsided. And, it's happening with businesses as well. I've noticed that I think it was Warren Buffett's business partner, I forget what his name is, had that great quote. it's only when the tide goes out that you can find out who was swimming naked the whole time.
Yes, yeah, it's
and
true.
he was saying,
Yeah.
it strips a lot of sort of useless jobs and businesses, and not that it's great that those people aren't employed, but it might make them think about different ways to do things, and being, coming up with creative ideas and shifting the way that we think about things and the way that we work and all this sort of stuff.
Yep.
And some people are arguing that we might have at the tail end of all this be like entering another kind of roaring 20s.
I think when you do come out of a hard time, I think majority of people come out stronger. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like there's going to be, but that's the kind of thing I think would really is going to influence a lot of the people that might struggle. Seeing other people going, hey, we got through this. Like, fuck, we made it. You know what I mean? Like we're all at the moment kind of going, where did that come from? Like now, like we're getting back to pretty good. You know what I mean? Like, you still every now and then you'll have don't forget the masks and that stuff like that. That's fine. But people are now used to it. But I think we got through that and everyone's going, fuck, we got through that. How good are we? Like, we actually got through it. Some people really, really struggled with it. And I know personally for you, like, that's affected a lot of people. And there's a lot of people that have struggled with it and they will continue to struggle for a while because they haven't adapted to anything yet. But I think there's some people that have really had the trampoline effect where they've gone, this is shit. Holy fuck, how much good is it? Like, we're back again now. People are out walking and they're doing things like people are going to, going out to see sports, or people are going out to do things because they can.
Yeah.
Because you get told someone you can't.
Here, like in
we've been
Australia.
extremely lucky here. But, like, I don't go to the pub very often. Like, I like to go to a restaurant. I like to go to someone's house and have a glass of wine. That's great. But when you get told you can't go to a pub, I remember sitting at work going, I just want to go to a pub and have a beer, because you were told you can't. You always want something that you can't have, And I think after a while, so many people said, you can't do this, you can't get up and sing or dance at nightclubs. Like, I've never been a nightclub singer or dancer. But when you told me I can't, I want to go there and do it now.
Yeah.
Because
one of the ones I don't really understand was people that were, I've tried to understand it, I've done my best, but the people that were sort of against wanting to wear a mask. Because to me, it seems like the world's worst trolley problem ever.
Oh, 100%.
You know what I mean? It's kind of like you can put 100,000 people at risk or whatever it is. Or you can wear this tiny bit of cloth over your face and, perhaps that will help a little bit. The opportunity cost seems so low that I couldn't really wrap my head around why people weren't taking that on or something.
I think some people really, really liked to be able to say, you can't tell me what to do. It's like, no, we can't tell you what to do, but this is what we recommend because we don't want to live like this forever, And it's like you said, it was wearing a mask and, there are so many ways that you can avoid to go out in public. If you don't want to go, like if you're in the car on your own, you don't have to wear your mask, right? If you're on public transport, you do because you're around other people, And where was I the other night? I think it was we were discussing this. It's about like with people on the buses that they should be wearing their masks and stuff like that. It's like, well, you got to wear it. It's not to protect each other from everyone, but it's like if someone does have it, it doesn't then spread onto the bus, which then other people are getting on.
Yeah.
So it's more like, you're stopping it from getting out as well as it getting in, but everyone wanted to have their say on it. Like I don't like wearing a mask. No one does, right?
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
But I like to go out and I like to cook meals, so I know that I've got to put it on for the 10 minutes while I go shopping. Or you can click a button and have someone deliver it for you. You know what I mean? Like if you're really against it, don't just...
Can I quickly pick up on that? Because I saw a few YouTube videos of you cooking for Woolworths.
Yes. Wow, that was a while ago.
You made some banana bread.
I did make banana bread.
And you made some butter chicken.
I did make the butter chicken.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did we make the fried rice for that as well? Or that was... I don't think it was...
No, you just brought in a whole bunch of roti and stuff that
was
made by someone else.
Someone else did it all. Yeah, no, I did. That, do you know what? That was a few years ago, and they said... Luke, we've heard you like cooking. Would you like to come and do some stuff at Woolworths? And I thought, fuck, this is going to mean I'm going to get like a year's supply of food from Woolworths. This is going to be great.
And you didn't?
No. I got the ingredients to make the 2 dishes that I made. Twice. So I could practice one and then I could do one on camera. But it was good. No, I did. It's so bizarre how kind of all over the shop the stuff I've done has been over the years. But yeah, I was a TV chef.
My question is, what do you cook at home then?
Me, look, I grew up in a fairly basic house, so I do like my staples. I do like just making a spaghetti bolognese, love that sort of stuff. But I I love roasting. I love, roasting vegetables. I love making my own soups and stuff like that as well. But dinner for me, I'm sort of into my health and fitness a bit at the moment. Sorry, a lot. So I'm usually like salmon and a nice salad and stuff like that. I don't do a lot of super tricky dishes because my roommate, he cooks like microwave meals. That's his thing. So my roommate Joel had a brain tumor last year. And so in February or March last year, Charlie Teo, who operated on my dad, operated on Joel.
Yeah.
So he had a really, really long, extensive recovery. So we kind of at the household, I went around and put some stability bars around in the bathroom and stuff for him, just because he's balanced, like he's the water
like
balance in his head. The vertigo was kicking in. Shit. Also, just with his his movement and stuff like that. He was a PT, but his movement was a little bit off, so I didn't want him tripping over everywhere. So we put a whole lot of stuff in the house for him. Anyway, he's hasn't fully recovered yet, but it was benign, the tumor, so it's actually shrunk now, which is all fantastic. But
that's good.
So which is wonderful news. But in the house, Joel makes his own meals because he's got a slight shake with his hand, which makes it difficult for him. So he does a lot of
cocktails.
He does. Yeah, he does.
He's not going to watch this, don't worry.
Yes, he will now. Oh, fuck, that was good. Okay, yeah, makes a lot of cocktails.
Yeah.
It's great. Sometimes I just sit on the couch and just say, put your head on my lap. It's fine. So it's been a long time. So, yeah, I'm really looking forward to Rachel coming because cooking a nice meal for yourself, as far as like making it, it's you feel like shit because you're like, okay, add 2 chicken fillets, and you think, oh, I only need 1.
Let me ask you this before we talk about long distance relationships. Okay. Have you cooked over video call?
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. We've the list of things you could do over video call, Tom, is unbelievable. Well, it's not unbelievable.
Go ahead.
There's a lot of things you can do over video call. A lot of things.
What was that? Smoking a bong?
That was me taking a very deep breath.
I'm joking. Fuck off.
All right.
Okay.
Okay. So
long distance relationship. Tell me about it.
They suck balls. Yeah. Sure. Long distance relationship really hard. So my fiance Rachel, I saw her last in the flesh on the 20th of January 2020.
But who's counting, right?
Yeah, exactly. Fuck, bro. It's unbelievable. So anyway, she was supposed to be out here at the end of March. Obviously, middle of March, COVID kicked in, all flights cancelled. She was supposed to leave like the week after. So everything got cancelled. We were like in a really, really difficult position at the time. We were going through a lot of hard things. And then, it was like, how are we doing this? Are we going to do this? I was like, don't worry. It's not going to last that long. We'll be fine. So I just kept reminding her the whole time, if we quit, it's not going to happen. If we quit, it's not going to happen. So don't quit. Don't quit on us. Let's just keep going. Let's keep going. We've definitely had some ups and downs. Really, really difficult times. So as I said, the 5 languages of love, both of ours involve physical contact, like being with each other. Mine's quality time. I like to do things with each other, go for hikes or, go grocery shopping together. I like to do that sort of stuff. Hers is physical touch. She needs to be hugged and told, and held and said, I love you. She needs to feel that kind of comfort. So those are our top 2 ways to show each other love. And when you take that away, you've got to then improve all the other ones. So for us now, the video calls and stuff like that is every day, daily, several times a day, because when she goes to bed at 3:00 our time, she wakes up at 2:00 our time. So you know what I mean? So we have a window during the day where we can speak to each other. So it's been really, really difficult. It's been so hard because there are some times where I want to be able to hold her and say it's going to be okay. And that's the one thing I can't do. I can send her flowers, I can send her chocolates, I can write her love stories, I can write her a letter and send it to her. But that's not what she needs. So it's been really hard, but we've really done really well as far as we watch movies together. Like we watched all the Marvel movies. We've cooked together. We go on hikes together. Like we do certain things where it's like if you were here, like I'll go get fish and chips. Oh, this is where we'd be sitting. And that sort of stuff. I sent her videos after each of the dances saying, "Hey, we just got this score. I know you'd be the audience. You'd be really proud of me, but I'm thinking of you now," just to sort of make sure that we have that connection. But it's been really shit because not just the distance, but the timing. You know, when she's going to bed at 3 o'clock, I'm still in the middle of my day. I'm not ready to lay
America's
down.
the worst time differences. Yeah.
It's horrible. But like now, I know exactly her tone of voice. You know, when she needs a certain thing or when she's feeling something, I know because we've been forced to learn that kind of communication with each other because of the long distance. Like I've done 6 months before long distance, or 3 months. That's it's hard, but it's fine. But this has been we're coming up to 16 months. So, excuse me. So yeah, like we've done pretty fucking well, I think.
So the final 3 questions,
Yes.
which are not too dissimilar to the first, but obviously different questions. This one might be, you right?
Yeah. So they're not similar, but they're the same, right? Is that what you said?
They're in the same vein, but they're different questions.
Okay.
Yeah. The first one would be, could be a little bit obvious asking you, but if you were to have to live in a country other than Australia, let's actually say for you, other than Australia or America.
I wouldn't want to live in America anyway.
Okay.
So that's good.
Either one of those places, if you had to live in another country, what would it be?
I really like where I've travelled. I really like going through Europe with the different cultures and the history and stuff like that. I think it would take a lot to be able to move over there. Canada, I really love the people in Canada. I don't think I would love to, if I had a choice to move anywhere, I wouldn't be America. As much as I'd love to work there, that's where it'd be. But there's some things over there that I don't particularly love. But I'd actually really like to live in England. I'd really like that. I think if you can, because with England you've got the access to go over to France. Because I love skiing, I love all that sort of stuff. I'd love to live in Japan. I'd love to go somewhere which is just different to where I've been. So like in England where it's cold and miserable and shitty, but you can put your body, you can put stuff on to get warmer, you know what I mean? And I know it's miserable, but then you find the goodness of living over there. I'd love to spend a season in Alaska. Like I watched this show called Life Below Zero, and it shows different families living in Alaska and how fucking hard it is and all that sort of stuff. I'd love to give that a go to see what it would feel like to live off the land, and because I want to push myself to do something that I wouldn't normally do. Like I want to be challenged in that sort of way. I think we can find ourselves sitting quite comfortably into life and just going, oh, cool, this is all right. You don't really do things that concern you that much. Whereas if that's the real natural adrenaline that you can get. Like Scotland, I think beautiful. It's just somewhere where it's cold and shit and miserable. I want to see what it's like.
So your joie de vivre can shine through.
Correct. Yeah. There you go. My joie de vivre. I don't even know what it means, but it sounds great.
It's a lust for life.
Yeah,
it's
exactly
exuberance.
Right. Yeah, why not?
Yeah.
I'd love to do that sort of shit.
Okay, if you had to do it all over again, but you had to do a different job, what would it be?
Probably chef. I love food, but I've got a friend of mine now he's really excelled in that industry, and he's got some books out, and he's got some TV shows. But I can just see him going to all these different events and cooking food, and I love the idea of having that kind of knowledge to be able to do that, because you can go to anyone's house, and say, look, let me come over and I'll prepare a really nice meal for you and your family and your friends, or you can go somewhere and bring something that's, when you socialize with everyone, majority, sometimes it's alcohol, but majority of the time it revolves around food.
Or it's both.
Or it's both, hopefully both.
Yeah.
If I'm going to go to your place, you're going to give me some food and it's a dry house.
Yeah.
Jimmy brings, all right?
Yeah,
Jimmy's going to bring. But, I think I would really love to do that. I think that would be a really, really lovely, very, very hard working, but I think it would be an amazing skill to have to be able to go and, go and teach someone how to do stuff. Like I'd love to be able to pass that on. So yeah, probably the kitchen.
That's a good answer.
Thank you.
And the final question for today. If you had to spend a day with a clone of yourself, what would be the most annoying part of the clone?
Oh, don't shut up. Oh, no, sometimes I talk. Like several times throughout this, I've gone, Luke, shut up, just wrap it up. Like, I know you've got to edit this into a certain amount, but like again, sometimes I'll keep talking and then I just start to roll. But for me, it would just be just shut up. Like sometimes. But
you understand that it's a clone, so you would both be talking at the same time.
Correct.
Or both, one of you ought to acquiesce at some point, right?
Yeah. So
who would that be?
We both won't.
Yeah.
We both be like, but I've got a story, but I've got a story, but I've got a story. Look, if I were to spend one day with a clone, I would probably, I would actually probably try to challenge myself to do things that me on my own in my head could push myself to a certain amount. But if I had me there encouraging me, how fast could I go? How long could I run for? You know, like, not how much could I drink, but like how much, like, but you know, you could push yourself. I think the first half of the day would be fitness.
Yeah.
And the second half of the day, I would literally just try and like play myself at darts or pool or something like that, like just to see how good I can go. But I'd like to try and challenge myself. Like, you know, as far as fitness, going to the gym, I sometimes get exhausted. I think I'd like to train with myself to see.
But wouldn't that be a futile exercise considering you're an exact clone?
Yeah, well, no, but would I encourage myself to go harder? Like, how could I encourage myself to do? What other answers have you had for that? Because I feel like a dick now.
A lot of people say that their clone would talk too much, but then again, I rarely interview people who don't like to talk. Would kind of be stupid.
Be a shit interview.
Yeah.
You're like, so how are you? Good.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, but that's a good answer. I like it. You're fine. Thank you so much for sitting with me today.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad we didn't stand.
Lucas Allen Jacob, which I know isn't your real name.
Lucas Allen Jacob. Let's go with that. Lucas Allen Jacob. Thank you, mate.
Thanks, man.
So good to speak to you.
Good to talk to you.
Are we going to have a drink now?
Yep.
Fuck yes.